Alright, you guys have spoken. You have voted in favor of the 10 plus 0 games. So we'll continue the climb to 2200 with what, 83 elo to go. Okay, we've got a Vienna. My opponent goes for d6. So, okay, it's a little bit passive. This dark square bishop can't get out quite as easily, but it's fine. This is an odd move. Bishop e6 so early. So, I mean, we could take and damage the structure a bit, but realistically, we're going to have to break with f4 anyway. So, he can always trade it off. There are some lines where we can allow him to take and get a bind on the d5 square, which is interesting. But I think I prefer to take and play f4. I think I prefer this because this is just like classic Vienna setup, right? Sure, the light squared bishops are off the board. I don't think it's that big a deal. So, okay, knight to f3. Now we are potentially threatening to ruin the pawn structure. So he takes. And, you know, we are slightly ahead in development, have slightly more space. Black can play e5 with tempo if he wants. Okay, knight to h5. I think we just drop our bishop back to e3 and say this knight is a bit misplaced. The knight's probably got to come back to f6. I don't think e5 can be played. Or can it? No, e5, knight e5, queen h4, bishop f2 should work. Okay, bishop e7. Perfectly fine. Let's castle. I expect him to castle as well. And we've just got a pretty equal looking position, but I'll probably play pawn to d4 on the next move and take the full center. Queen d7, okay. Does he really want to castle queenside? That feels... Also, we could play knight e5, which attacks the queen as well, so you have to take. Knight e5, queen h5 check. Let's say knight g6. I think I like that. Let's go for it. Knight e5. And I didn't like it before because I felt like he could just ignore me. But here his queen was under attack, so he couldn't ignore me. So, okay, we have this position. Nothing special. But I mean, worst case scenario, I can just go rook f3 and rook a to f1 and just double up. We could also play knight to b5 at some point, supported by the queen, which would be interesting. Our bishop is also covering a7, so maybe castling queenside would be difficult. Also, if you castle queenside, I can play rook to f7, which probably isn't that good for you. Good for you as in my opponent. What else can we do? I think just doubling up makes the most sense. I mean, other than that, our pieces are pretty well placed. Yeah, let's just go rook f2. I mean, if he castles and I go rook f7, it's like, oh, you've just wasted a tempo. And it's like, yeah, maybe I have, but I don't really know what else to do. So I think this is perfectly reasonable. Okay, well, we can grab this pawn. I don't really see a downside. I don't see a downside. I mean, bishop f6 can't be played because I take the queen. But even if you move the queen, let's say, I mean, c6 is the only reasonable square, then I can always just take on h7. And it looks scary to open the lines up in front of my own king. But I don't think that black can really form any meaningful attack. Because, I mean, we'll have basically all of our pieces defending anyway. And our knight is good on c3, just holding the center. So I don't really see a reason not to do this. The queen isn't threatening anything. So just rook h7, we can be up 2 pawns. Black has a lot of weaknesses in his position. I would say all of these pieces are weak. Yeah, and he's got to bring his queen all the way back, which is obviously not very active. Now we do have to be slightly careful we don't get our queen trapped. So I think rook f1 would be a good move, because if rook to h8, I can go queen to f7, which seems to force a queen trade. So I like that. If he takes and I take, and he goes queen to f8, and I go king back to g1, I mean, The knight is still under attack. The bishop is still weak. You can't really exploit this diagonal. E6 is also weak. Okay, knight h4. Interesting. So the knight isn't threatening anything, although, like, maybe he can go for some kind of shenanigans. I don't know if they work, but he can go for it. Okay. Bishop f2 looks very solid. That looks like a really solid move. I mean, grabbing the a7 pawn looks ridiculous to me. I mean, firstly, our bishop could just get trapped with b6. But also, we're up 2 pawns anyway. There's no need to go pawn grabbing. Okay. Queen f6. Is that not just a blunder? Because if queen d4, bishop back to f2. And I mean, if he trades, then he's completely lost. You know, the bishop can't stop my pawns. I just put all the pawns on light squares, actually. That's far easier. And the pawns are completely safe, and we can just throw my kingside pawns at black. And I think it's also even more winning because the pawns are connected, which makes it hard for the bishop to set up any kind of blockade, right? So we, you know, obviously we have to be careful we don't blunder something silly. But I mean, yeah, he can set up a blockade for the time being on the g5 square. I'm not sure it's that big a deal, though. d4. And just drop back. And yeah, I just don't really see how black holds this. I think c3, just securing the d4 pawn, allowing my knight to move. Knight f4, going after the e6 pawn. If the e6 pawn pushes, knight e6 check. King has to go back to h6. Now let's not be silly and play g5. Because I think that's drawing. If we grab the pawn on c7, black grabs the pawn on d4, and I don't love that. If we take on e5, then bishop takes e5, knight c7, bishop c3. Don't love that either. I think I prefer to play d5 because, one, I'm keeping my pawns on the light squares, and two, I'm also keeping the position pretty closed, which should favor the knight, I think. Okay, pawn c6. I think I should take, because I can probably create a bind on d5 with pawn c4. And what I think I can do is essentially just run my king over to the queen side, because d5 can't be played, and if you move your king away from h6, which, by the way, the only square it can go to is h7, then I can push g5, and that's problematic. For black, anyway. Okay, let's start running the king over. The knight on e6 is excellent. Excellent piece. Okay, yeah, well, that's a completely losing move, because now the black king is tied down to the pawns over here. I don't need to go to f3. I mean, going to f3 is fine, but with this pawn formation, the king can never take the defending pawn, because then it's too far away to stop the pawn in front. And if it just hangs around, it can't do anything. And then I can just come and clean up over here. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, black is running out of options. B4, B5 should be crushing, and if you take, I have a passed A pawn. I mean, yeah, there's too many passed pawns. I guess I just take. Push, 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 push. And then I promote with check. Although, to be honest, it's probably just easier to run the king back. If the black king is not in time, I can just block the pawn very easily. And then if you take... I mean, you can have this pawn, actually, because you can't stop my other pawn. And then, obviously, this is a very easily winning endgame. So, GG. GG. Very interesting. Let's do a very brief game review, and then we'll hop into another game. Let's see. 89.5% accuracy for us, 81.4% for my opponent. Looks like we missed something in the opening. That's interesting. Okay, let's see. So here, my opponent doesn't play the more common knight to f6 or bishop c5, but goes d6, which does get played. And yeah, after bishop e6, the engine does like knight to f3, which is a move I mentioned, allowing this trade so we can get a bind on the d5 square. I think it's sort of like a Maroczy against the Sicilian, but I don't love those positions. I prefer these positions personally. After ef4, bishop f4, knight h5, the engine really likes our position. And after bishop e7... Oh my god, of course we can go knight g5. Because if take, then we take with check, and we pick the bishop up. So we're just up a piece. Oh, I completely missed that. And if you save your knight, then I'll just take on e6 with pretty dire consequences. I mean, like knight g7, king f7, knight f5. I'm up 2 pawns, you can't castle. I'm going to castle. Like, that's just game over. So I missed that. Queen d7. Okay, knight e5. Engine likes d4, but personally, I thought this position was forced. Now, g6 is playable, and I did see that g6 was a move, but I didn't think my opponent would play it, because d4 comes with tempo on the knight. So after knight c6 retreating, d4, d5, e5, castle queenside. I mean, I still really like this position. The engine really wants knight d1. What's the point? Knight f2, rook f5, c3, rook f... No, not there, rook f8. And then just throw the pawns forward. Interesting. My opponent went knight g6, though, which I thought was more natural. The engine wants bishop d4. And if e5, then bishop back to e3. And if castles, then rook f7. Okay, but what if he doesn't castle? Say bishop f6. Then what's the idea? F2. And if you castle... Oh, we're winning the d5 square for the knight. Oh, that makes sense. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, I went rook f2, though. Castles. Rook f7 is best. Rook d to f8 is a mistake because... Not taking, but rook f1. Which I saw. And I saw this line, which is not good. Better to take and then play queen f7. Huh. And the black position is just frozen. And I'm threatening the g7 pawn. I did not consider that. King d8. Queen g7. King e8. Yeah, black is just stuck. Okay. I thought this was a good shout. However, there's only one move here to defend for black. Now, my opponent played queen c6, but apparently queen e8 is the only defensive idea. And if I take on h7, after rook h7, queen h7, rook h8, I get into this perpetual where my queen has no good escape. And if I come to d4, then I'm losing after knight h4, because this is threatened and this is threatened. So I saw that I can't get that I don't want to get my queen trapped. But after queen c6, there's no rook to h8 because I just take on g6. So black has to waste a move playing queen e8, but now it's too late because I get rook f1. And now if you try to go rook h8, I go queen to f7 rather than queen g7. And now you have to trade with me, and I mean, I'm up 2 pawns, which is effectively what happened in the game. After queen f6, I thought was a questionable move because it means that you can't avoid trades. Although, to be fair, there's very little you can do. Queen f4 is the best move, which also threatens queen c1. So if I play a lazy move, like, I don't know, bishop h4, I'm in a bit of trouble. And like g3, queen c1, king g2, queen c2, king h3, bishop b2, and I'm still apparently winning, probably because of my passed pawns, but it's not simple. My opponent went queen at f6, which I think maybe he was thinking he could play queen d4, but the problem is that I have bishop to f2 here, and then I'm up a whole piece. So you have to trade with me, and then the endgame is relatively simple. I just wanted to make it very, very easy to play. I liked this knight on e6. I thought that was very smart because there's basically nothing black can do. And I'm just going to run my king over here, maybe go b4, b5, and just win. The engine wants pawn c5, but then I can put the knight on d5, and you can only play on the dark squares with the black pieces. And all of my pieces are on light squares. So let's say knight c7, bishop e7, knight d5, bishop d8, knight e3, coming to f5. I don't even know, what do you play? Bishop f6, knight f5, king g5. I can push, I can win d6. You know, it's game over, really. So bishop e7, king e3, and then, yeah, bishop g5 makes my life very easy because I get to trade. But, I mean, what else can black do? He can just shuffle. That's all he can do. And I was just going to run my king over here and start scooping up pawns. So, yeah. That was essentially what happened, just without the minor pieces on the board. And then we win relatively easily. So, yeah, let's jump into another game. That was very interesting. A strange line of the Vienna, missing an interesting tactic in the opening, unfortunately. But alright, let's see what we get. Well, I can pre-move c6, because I play c6 against everything. Okay. We have a Slav defense. See what my opponent goes for. Okay, it's a very quiet version of the Slav with a very quick e3. It's reasonable, and I think we can get away with bishop to f5 here. I actually saw a Hanging Pawns video, which, by the way, if you don't know who Hanging Pawns is, he's a great chess YouTuber. Where I think he was saying that if white goes for an early e3 in the Slav, you can get away with bishop to f5 in a lot of lines. So, okay, we trade off our bad bishop. We build the pawn structure on the light squares, which is kind of the idea of the Slav defense. And everything is good. Okay, c5. My opponent tries to cramp our position. And now we need to be very aware that we can't sit around and do nothing. We need to make pawn breaks happen to challenge this... challenge these dark squared pawns. So my first reaction is to go knight bd7 and e5. Now if knight bd7, knight to f3, stopping e5, and I mean knight to f3 can't be a bad move. If pawn b6, pawn b4, pawn a5, I think that's a good line for us. We can maybe go b6 immediately, but I think this is fine. I mean, one downside is maybe queen a6 can be played because our knight doesn't cover that square. But I don't think it's very good because we still just take on c5. So, yeah, you've got to be really careful in these positions where white goes for an early c5, that you're not just getting overrun. But here the important part is that a3 can't be played because after take, the rook hangs. So if the bishop was on b2, this would be a different story. But the bishop isn't on b2, which means the rook is undefended, which means a3 can't be played to support the b4 pawn, which is very, very important in these Slav positions. And you have to play relatively quickly to make sure you do not get overrun. So, okay. If bc5, bc6, knight b6 looks okay. If we play take, knight takes, takes, take, that looks fine for us. If take and queen takes and take and bishop takes, that looks good for us. If knight to e5, queen b6 looks strong. If here, I think c6 is the key move. That one I'm less sure about. If here, we can't take on d4 because he takes our knight with check. If knight b6, take queen b5. I don't love that. So what if we just go queen c7? So that we can take. Yeah, I think queen c7 makes sense. Maybe a4? Maybe I'm allowing a4 when I shouldn't. But I mean, if a4 immediately, then I just take on c5. If he takes on b6, say knight b6, pawn a4, c5 looks strong. And yes, I give him a passed b pawn, but he's going to have that regardless of what I do. Because if I take, he just takes. And yes, I get a passed a pawn, but it's well blockaded. That's, it's never getting through. So if, sorry, take, a4, c5. I think I like that position. Because knights are very good blockaders. And the reason is because the pawn being, well, one, they're a low value piece, right? So it's hard for them to get kicked around because they're not worth that much anyway. If it was like a queen, it'd get kicked out by anything. So a knight's low value. Also, the pawn being in front of it doesn't impede the knight's movement because the knight, of course, can jump over pieces. So it can still see everything it would normally see if the pawn wasn't there. Whereas, let's say a rook was there, well, it wouldn't be able to see the b file, would it? Because the pawn would be blocking its vision. So that's another benefit of the knight being the blockader. So, okay, he does go for this. If he takes, I'm not very concerned. He does push a4, and we're going to go c5. Because I think this is a strong-looking move. And, yeah, I think, taking would probably be slightly dubious. I mean, bishop takes, rook c8, castle. That position looks perfect. We just dominate the c-file. If a move like bishop to a3, we could take. We could push. I don't love pushing, though. Wow, he does take. Okay. Well, he has this b5 pawn, but it's not going anywhere. Not going anywhere. Okay. Well, let's go rook c8. We can castle. I guess bishop b2. Maybe we can play knight to c4. And this is what I mean about the knight blockading. Like, it can still go to the squares it wants to go to. And if he goes to c4, it still controls b6. It still controls that square. So, alright. White has a 2-on-1 on the queen side. He has a protected passed pawn. However, it's well blockaded, and the supporting pawn could be weak in the future. This knight will most likely move or fall, and then it will have to be defended by a rook, and maybe that isn't so good. We have a majority on the, center and king side. We can potentially create a passed pawn in the future, but we have to be a bit patient. We have good control over the e4 square, so we could potentially whack a knight on e4 if this knight moves or gets traded off. We have dominance over the c-file, which is nice, and we just have a very strong central structure. So my opponent tries to break immediately. d4 looks good, though. Oh, sorry, no. D4 just hangs a pawn. And I don't think rook d8 works. I think we can just castle, though. Because if he takes, knight takes, and I'm not sure that opening the center is a good idea for white, because I think a4 is going to become quite weak. And my bishop is very strong. Now that he's played the pawn from e3 to e4, he opens up my bishop. I have, good control over the c-file. I can also put a rook on d8 very easily and challenge this queen. If bishop g5... Okay, pawn e5. I wasn't too concerned about pawn e5. I mean, I understand it kicks my knight away from the f6 square, and he can try and create some kind of attack, but I figured g6 should be fine. Okay. I mean, knight e4 seems to make no sense. Knight e4, knight e4, d e4, queen e4, and we have nothing to show for the lost pawn. So that doesn't make sense. Is knight g4 interesting? Ooh, that's an interesting move. Also, I just realized, did I have bishop f2 here? Oh, I need to be very aware now. Bishop f2 could be really strong. Right now, no. Because he wins my knight at the end of the line. If I go knight g4, knight g5, bishop f2, rook f2, if I take, then he mates me, so it doesn't quite work. If knight g4, knight g5, pawn g6, then this is quite a weak pawn. And bishop e3 isn't going to cut it. Also, we are attacking e5. So if my opponent plays bishop to f4, defending e5, I mean, maybe we can just go bishop f2. Bishop f2, rook f2. Ooh. Isn't that losing? Because of knight f2? Your queen's under attack, I'm threatening discoveries, and after the trade, we win the knight. And I'm up an exchange and a pawn, which should be winning. Yeah, I probably had bishop f2 earlier on. But I mean, I really should have seen it, don't get me wrong. I mean, after pawn e4, I think bishop f2 was completely winning, and I should have played it. But we see the idea eventually, which is fine. Okay, this knight is coming to c6. Not sure I can stop it. Not sure I can stop it. f6 is a move I'd love to play. Although I think rook c4 is pretty strong. It's just a simple double attack. f6 does look strong. Take, 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 take. Rook b8. And the pawn can't be defended. If you move the rook, then I maintain my blockade. And, I mean, you're not really getting anywhere then. Rook b8, and this looks like game over to me. Now, I had to make sure the pawn wasn't gonna be a problem. Like, for example, if this pawn, after rook b8, could teleport to b7, well, then maybe I'd be quite concerned. And maybe I'd go for a different line, because although I'm up a pawn and an exchange, this is a very, very difficult position to play. Wait, am I missing something? I don't think so. I think he's just trying to go b7. But yeah, once I play this should be fine. Currently, the knight actually has no moves, funnily enough. Because everything is covered by the pawn or the rook. But I'm going to have to move my rook now. Knight c5 was a funny looking move that might have been decent, but it's unnecessary. I can't cover this square. Okay, let's just go f6. I completely missed that move. Lol. That's quite funny. It's fine though. I have rook b5 with tempo on the knight. And the knight only has one square. Why is this kind of complicated, actually? Maybe f6... I mean, f6 must have been a decent move. I don't know. Maybe it was better just to walk my king over. Oh, g5? King g4? f5, take, check. King f6, rook g6, king e7. I'm just asking for trouble. I could take. I think I might just take to get the connected passed pawns. I didn't comprehend the king could take, I'm not going to lie. King f7, knight d8. King e7, knight e6. I think it's easier just to go win these pawns and just leave those. My knight's kind of trapped, though. But there's no good way for him to win it, and his bishop's going to have to move eventually, so that's alright. That's alright. He doesn't have a perpetual of any sort. Check here. No, that doesn't work. Just take. And get my knight to b2, supported by the rook, and bring it into the game. I'm giving him too much play, though. But I mean, players at this sort of rating, they do just keep fighting. Like, they don't give up. They don't give up. I mean, if take, I can probably just go here, 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 here. Yeah, I don't really want to give up the knight, though. I don't really want to give up the knight. I need to evacuate it. On h4. Take here. Well, then the bishop's pinned, and I can move the knight. If he pushes... Rook h4. King here. Take with check. King here. Can't go to c5. It's interesting. It is. But my opponent is ticking down on the clock. Yeah, I don't think this is the way to go. Wait, what's that? Maybe he wants here, 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 which would be a draw. But if bishop takes g7, I can just take the knight. So that's okay. Okay, knight moves. Maybe this is winning, but it's too complicated for my taste. The knight comes here, I can just tuck the king away. That's not a problem. I think I'm just going to go to h2 to support my knight coming to b2. And then once I get my knight, you know, evacuated, it should be easy enough. My king's pretty safe. I'm just keeping my king and rook far apart as well to avoid any forks. If knight f3, rook c2 maybe. Oh, that's an interesting move. It's very interesting. Stopping the knight coming to b2. Huh. That's cool. But the king can't approach very well. Let's go rook c2. So the king can't come to c4 to try to come in. I mean, I also give myself the c3 square for the knight. Okay, let's come over here. Oh my god, I nearly blundered that. Knights are tricky. Tricky. My god, I'm running out of time. Christ. What am I doing? I'm gonna lose on time, aren't I? I'm gonna lose on time. I'm completely throwing. Oh my god. Why wouldn't I go rook g4? Of course rook g4 is better. What an idiotic move. Stupid move. Just gonna lose on time. Oh, oh my god. He didn't even take it. And it doesn't matter, because I'm going to lose on time anyway. I spent ages on stuff I shouldn't have spent ages on. Oh, wait, but now I get a draw. Yeah, now I get a draw, because insufficient material. So, if he hadn't have taken the rook, I think he would have won. Yeah, he would have. Because bishop and knight can checkmate. That's very funny. Yeah, I just couldn't figure out the solution in this position to win easily. Knight c3 check. I saw this was a move, but I was very concerned about the dual threats of knight e7 and bishop c3. The engine wants rook here. And if a check is given, I just move. Yeah. Well, to be honest, I'm very happy to get a draw out of that. Opening was brilliant. Very happy with the opening. Missed a tactic. And they just ran out of time, which... Okay, we managed to salvage a draw, though. And we've got another Slav. So we'll see what happens. Oh, I hate that line. To me, this line is incredibly boring. It's effectively a... Catalan. I mean, what do you... Well, what can we do? What can we do? If White wants to play a Catalan, he's going to play a Catalan. But this is what I personally play against it. Okay, knight to d2 is on the way to prepare pawn to e4. I don't put my bishop on d6 because it can be vulnerable to e4, e5. Can I go c5? I think I can. To me, it's very important to strike as quickly as possible in the center if White makes it clear that e4 is the goal, which it normally is. And, you know, we are volunteering ourselves into an isolated queen-pawn structure. But I think it's okay because we have a bigger center. Okay, let's go knight c6. I'd be very happy with this trade, because then d5 would be well supported, and the d5 pawn supports the e4 square very well. Maybe he can play e4 anyway, but take, 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 take. I'm happy to trade off this light squared bishop, because if you play e4 now, you have to trade your light squared bishop. Or, I mean, if you take and then go e4, you have to trade the light squared bishop, which is fine by me. Okay. c4 looks strong, because c6 defends d5, d5 defends c4, the e4 square is well protected, rook e8, bishop b4 ideas maybe. Okay, queen a4. I see no reason not to play queen b6. There's never any rook b1 because my bishop's covering, which is very useful. I really like this position. I think rook e8, rook b8 make a lot of sense. And maybe not rook b8, actually. Okay, the knight is vulnerable. So what do you do against bishop to b4? If bishop to e2, maybe. Bishop b4, bishop b to d2. If we take, maybe that's fine. Maybe that's fine. Let's take. If queen takes, I think we probably ignore it. If rook b8, bishop to f4 looks annoying. Bishop b4, if rook c1. Probably playable. What about rook b8, bishop f4, bishop b7? If e4, again, you have to trade off your light squared bishop. If bishop b4, rook c1, maybe I just go a5. Yeah, I like that. I like that. a5 frees up this rook as well. Also, we have the option of rook e8 because the bishop vacates the e-file. So if we are ever concerned about e4, we can shut it down pretty quickly. I'm also giving myself the option to take and play knight to e4 in certain positions, but that is a very big commitment to be trading off my dark squared bishop, so I want to be very sure about doing that if I do it. And yeah, I would say this is probably pretty successful from an opening standpoint. I mean, our c6 pawn is kind of weak, I understand that, but I don't see a really good way for white to exploit it. I mean, let's say like knight a2, bishop hit, pawn hit. I mean, yeah, he does go for it. c5 doesn't work. What am I on about? Can I just go rook b8? Knight takes. If queen takes, then queen takes, queen takes, queen takes. Sorry, rook takes. Doesn't really work. If here, here, that hangs. If rook c8, knight take. Pawn take. I think he can sack the queen. Oh, maybe this is not so good. How can I deal with this? Well, no, he's just going to take this. What about bishop d7? Just defending. Knight takes, pawn takes. Now if you sack the queen, I can go knight to e8. There is bishop h3 there, though. So maybe bishop e8. There is bishop g5. But then I can go king f8. Feels very uncomfortable, though. And I think black is... Sorry, I think white is probably better. Bishop d7, knight... Well, if bishop d7, knight b4, I can take with the queen. Queen takes... Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Because then you can't sack on a8. And it doesn't matter that my queen no longer defends the pawn, because the pawn's defended by a bishop. There's no tactics here, because this is defended by the knight. And, I mean, theoretically, we have a strong queenside majority. Although I completely missed that move. Rook b8, rook a4. Then we get c5, though. Okay, let's do that. If rook a7... It's not threatening anything. It is annoying, but... Yeah, he does go for it. Rook b6. Followed by rook f2, b8, maybe? If rook b6, bishop 2, g5. Bishop f5. Take. Rook c8. Sorry, c7. Rook a8. Rook takes. Rook takes. Rook takes. Check. Bishop f1. I have bishop h3. Game over. Okay, let's go rook b6. I think the idea has to be that if this rook leaves the a file, then I take the a file. If he chooses to dominate the a file, which looks reasonable, he does go for that. Probably rook c8. If rook to a4, pawn c5, take. Pawn c5, take. Take. That's losing. I mean, I could go here, but then bishop f4. Pawn c5. Take, rook take. That's very uncomfortable. Knight e4. If bishop e4, d e4, rook b4, rook b4, bishop b4. Opposite color bishop should be drawn. Ooh, that's a good point. So if knight there, you probably can't take it. So bishop b4. I mean, you could go rook b4, actually. Rook b4, bishop b4, rook b8. I think this is the way to go. I don't think defending this pawn is a good idea. I think we probably have to try to play as actively as we can. I am low on time, though, which, as we know, is a constant struggle for this series. I still can't believe we saved a draw in the last game. Okay. Pawn c5 still doesn't work. Doesn't do anything. If rook b8. Maybe that works now. There's no bishop d6. And if you take my knight... I mean, I could take the rook. The more accurate is probably just to take back. And if bishop c5, I take here. And then the opposite color bishops is just a draw. I mean, even if I was down a pawn, it should be a draw. But I'm not even down a pawn. It's equal material. Pawn f3, interesting. So if take, we have issues. Okay. If I move the knight, he goes bishop d6, I assume. It's a strong looking move. Is it actually strong though? I think so. I mean, if knight f6, bishop to d6. Rook e8. In theory, we have a double attack, but I'm not convinced it's that good because our king looks exposed. c5, take. I mean, I don't achieve anything there. And I've got to move the knight, or he's going to take my knight. f3 is a good move. Completely missed that. Knight f6, bishop d6. Rook e8, rook a8. Rook b3, rook e8. Bishop e8, rook a8. Also, if check, he is king f2 from now on. I just can't move any of my pieces. They're frozen. Completely frozen. I've got no time either. Oh my god. What am I doing? I've just... Yeah, I've got no time. This, I think, is losing. Rook a8 looks like game over. I'm just way too exposed. What is that? Is that a lifeline? This is confusing. Rook a8 still looks winning, though. Yeah. I think I'm still lost. The problem is bishop h3. Yeah, there's rook a8, king f8, bishop d6, king g8, bishop e7. And then I lose. Yeah. Then bishop e7. There's no defense. Or is there? Do I have rook e3? Maybe I can hold. Although I've got 17 seconds. That's always going to be the killer. And my structure's bad. Oh, I just completely missed that. I could have taken that. Let's take it now. I've just got no time on the clock. I'm not leaving myself enough time for these endgames. Yeah, I just completely blundered that. Uh, oh my god. That's so frustrating. We just got ourselves out of a completely lost position. Completely lost position into a drawn position, but I have no time on the clock to convert it. I mean, I can't win this position, really. I mean, maybe if I have time, I could try to win, but it's going to be difficult because how do I execute c5 safely? That's so annoying. That's so damn annoying. But yeah, I've got to improve with my time management for sure, and it's good for me to learn this. But also, wiggling our way out of this position, I was pretty astounded with. I didn't realize that rook to e3 is a move. Now, the engine suggests bishop to d6. I thought I had rook e6, but apparently not. Bishop h3. I can't go here. What if I just, like, what if I do this? I just slowly lose, apparently. I mean, if pawn g6, I lose the knight, so that's no good. But yeah, we wiggled our way out of the position, and then, you know, had no time on the clock. Interesting, though. Interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see another very interesting game in the Slav defense, which is what we just played, check out the video up here. And if you want to see the previous episodes of this climb to 2200 Rapid, the playlist is down there. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.